So let's say you wake up one morning and decide that today is the day that you finally start that business that you've been thinking of. Today is the day that you supplement your income. Today is the day that you become your own boss and make your own decisions in life. Well, if you're in South Africa, there are 4 ways in which you can go about doing this. Well, 4 businesses that you can start in order to do this. FYI, I'm mentioning these 4 because these are for profit. So right now, we're assuming that you want to make money from this, so it's for profit businesses. So let's start, but first, a word from our sponsors. Here's a product that you should buy. Yes, so the first form of business, or the first type of business, is called a sole proprietorship, more commonly known as a sole trader. This type of business does not require much. You just wake up and sell. You find people that are interested in buying your products or services and you sell. A lot of freelancers, hawkers that you see on the street are sole traders. In terms of the documentation that you need, you don't really need documentation. You just simply need to let SARS, the South African Revenue Services, know that you have this business that's bringing you additional income, or that's bringing you this amount of income, so that they know how to tax you for tax reasons. The benefits or the pros to a sole proprietorship is that it's fairly easy to start. You don't really need much. You don't need to pay anything to start it. You just wake up, get your products, or buy your products and sell your products. Or if it's services, you sell your services. The cons to this is you are personally liable for everything that happens to the business. So if you end up getting in debt, or the business ends up getting in debt, the debtors can come to you to collect the debt, which means that your personal assets will also be in jeopardy of being seized by these debtors. Or if you are sued because your product or services went up to scratch, or they hurt someone, it affects you personally. Second type of business is called a partnership. Now with a partnership, you and a couple of your friends, or you and a couple of colleagues, or people you met, can decide to start a business, sort of like a joint venture kind of thing, whereby each of you will contribute different skills towards a certain goal of the business. And also profits and losses, you can decide on how they are divided. So you put this in an agreement called the partnership agreement. In this agreement, all of the things that I stated before will be mentioned there: what your roles will be, how profits and losses will be shared, what the goal of the business is. Now, you don't really need much to start it, but you do need to go and let the South African Revenue Services know of this venture, so that they are able to also tax you and your partners on this income that's coming in. The pros to this, it's also fairly easy to start. It just needs that partnership agreement. You get the benefit of getting a whole lot of skills to produce something really awesome. The downside to it is, if things go sour between you guys, you might end up having to separate, and the partnership agreement becomes obsolete. Same thing happens if someone else wants to join this partnership. The old partnership agreement becomes obsolete, and you start a new partnership agreement with the new person. Also, you are personally liable. All of you jointly are personally liable for any debts that the business might incur. You're personally liable. So your personal assets will be affected. The third one is a proprietary limited company, PTY Ltd, aka a private company. Now, with a private company, it is a bit different from the other 2 that I mentioned before, in the fact that this one, you have to register it with a body. So a body called the CIPC, Companies and Intellectual Property Commission. There are a bunch of different ways to register it, but these two are the most common and fairly easiest. So you register it by going to their website, cipc.co.za, and then going to the e-services section. On the e-services section, there are forms that they give you that you have to fill in, forms that incorporate the company. There has to be a minimum of one director. So a director is someone who will be running the day-to-day operations of the company, or just making sure that the company is going well. And there has to be an incorporator. An incorporator is a person who is registering the company. You will then also have to send them a copy of your ID that has been certified no longer than 3 months. Now that's the manual way of doing things. There is another way which does not require any paperwork, which is registering it through a website called bizportal.co.za. Biz as in B-I-Z, portal.co.za. Now this one, everything is automatic. You register a profile. You also have to register a profile on the CIPC website. So you register a profile. After that, after you have registered a profile, then you fill in all the information to register the company, and you put in your ID there. Then it automatically checks your ID with Home Affairs, and then you can start the company. So the same things are needed as when registering it on CIPC, as in there needs to be at least one incorporator, and there needs to be at least one director. Now the registration process, not going too much into it, but you have to reserve a name. Well, you don't necessarily have to reserve a name, but it's better to have a company that has a name than to have it just full of random numbers. So you reserve a name, which costs 50 Rand. After you reserve a name, then you go to the actual registration of the company, which costs 125 Rand. Now you could just decide to not reserve a name, so meaning you save 150 Rand and you pay 125 Rand. But now the name that will be given to your company will be your enterprise name, which is the year that you registered in. So this year is 2022. It will be 2022 / 5 numbers / 07 or 2 other numbers. And then in brackets at the end, it will be South Africa written in capital letters. So it is your choice if you want to reserve a name or to just register it like that. Fortunately, you can reserve a name at a later stage, and you can use these two websites to do that. So in terms of the advantages of it, well, it's a company. You are protected. If you are in debt, or if your company is in debt, it doesn't affect your personal asset. It affects your stake in the company. So whatever assets the company has, that is what is affected. You can hire people without necessarily having to start a new company again. You can get other directors in there to help you run the company without having to start another company. It's just a matter of updating the directors on these two websites, which will then be put in the Memorandum of Incorporation, MOI. The other advantage is you can have other people join as owners, selling them shares. So you get like 100 shares when you start off. So those are the advantages. There are, of course, a whole lot of other advantages with the company. So the disadvantages to a company, it's not really a lot of disadvantages except for the paperwork. There's quite a lot of paperwork. At some point you have to submit your financial statements. You have to make sure that you comply with the law. The fourth one is a public company limited, so LTD. Now a public company is like a private company, but its difference, it has a whole lot of other differences, but the main one is that you can sell your shares to the general public and can be registered on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Now with a public company, you can only register it through email. There are a number of documents which you have to fill in, which include the incorporation documents. You have to send the certified IDs of the directors and the incorporator. There has to be no less than 3 directors. And the other requirements for it is you have to have a secretary, there has to be an auditor, and there has to be an auditing committee. You also have to submit audited financial statements at the end of every financial year. So you register it through an email. The email is companydocs@cipc.co.za. You can also reserve the name if you want to reserve the name. It's usually best to reserve the name, and you can reserve this name through the portals that I told you about, or through the websites that I told you about when registering a private company. cipc.co.za, e-services, the e-services section, or bizportal.co.za. So you reserve the name. Reserving the name is still 50 Rand. And then after you have reserved the name, you'll be given a document showing that you have reserved this name and with a reference number. You email this reference number along with the other documents to the email to register a company. It is 425 Rand to register a company. All in all, it is 475 Rand for a public company. Advantages of a private company. The first one is your personal assets are protected. You can get a whole lot more capital through a public company. You can get as many people to buy shares as possible because your shares can be offered to the public. You can register with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. There are other advantages. Feel free to mention them there in the comments. The disadvantages are you have to follow a whole lot of processes because you are public. A lot of things about your company has to be shared with the public, such as your financial statements, things like how you run in the company, because the general public who buy your shares are shareholders, so they need to know that the money that they're investing is actually being used for proper things. And if not, then trouble. So there are a lot of rules and regulations that you have to follow with a public company. Those are the 4 types of businesses that you can start in South Africa for profit. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, comment if you found this interesting. Peace.